Yamashita Kazuo, a tired 56-year-old salaryman, stops in his tracks. In a dark, neon-lit corner of the city, he spots something in a back alley that no ordinary person would ever notice. He peers into a deserted lot behind the buildings, witnessing a scene straight out of an underground movie. Two men are squaring off, and it looks like a brutal duel is about to begin. One of the fighters is a literal giant named Kamada. Standing over 190 centimeters tall, his presence is absolutely crushing. Just one glance at his face tells Kazuo this guy is definitely not ordinary. Kamada is a mountain of muscle, his back bulging unnaturally even through his clothes. His fists look like boulders, covered in countless scars from what must have been years of violent, bloody brawls. Standing opposite the giant is a young man in his mid-20s named Takeda Oma. He's wearing a simple tracksuit and hoodie, looking far more athletic than bulky, and standing a full head shorter. The size difference is staggering. Kazuo watches from the shadows, trembling as he realizes the hooded kid is actually going to fight that monster. He's convinced our boy is about to get killed. Kamada crosses his arms, looking down at his opponent with pure contempt. He mocks Oma for being insane, pointing out that his massive build should be enough information to make anyone run away. The giant reveals he's a high-ranking Yakuza, claiming his strength is on a completely different level. From his hiding spot, Kazuo can't help but agree. The guy looks like a force of nature. Oma just grins, nonchalantly cracking his neck. He admits he could tell Kamada was a Yakuza at first glance, but his calm expression suggests he isn't the least bit impressed by the title. Suddenly, Oma's face twists into a terrifyingly wide smile as he tells the giant to quit talking trash. He calls Kamada a big tub of lard, leaving Kazuo absolutely stunned by the audacity. Kamada snaps, his face darkening with murderous rage. He declares that Oma is dead meat as he grips his own shirt, preparing to unleash the full extent of his terrifying physical power. With a violent rip, the giant shreds his clothes, revealing a body that looks less like a human and more like a statue. His muscles are so dense, they seem to grow even larger. The reason for his nickname becomes clear. A massive, intricate tattoo of a Deva King covers his entire back. He truly looks like a terrifying guardian god come to life in this alleyway. Kazuo is sweating buckets, wondering if he's looking at some kind of biological Terminator. There's no way Oma can win against a beast that big, yet the young fighter just stands there smirking. Our boy walks forward, casually complimenting Kamada's impressive build. He notes that the giant must have put in some serious work to make professional bodybuilders look average by comparison, still completely unfazed. Kamada strikes first, throwing his shredded shirt to blind Oma. Kazuo realizes it's a dirty tactic meant to obscure his vision just long enough for the giant to land a finishing blow. A massive fist whistles through the air, but Oma dodges the sneak attack with ease. He slips past the giant's swing, his reflexes far sharper than anyone could have expected from his appearance. Kamada unleashes a flurry of strikes, but this guy is just too fast. He dances around the giant's heavy blows, moving with a fluid grace that leaves Kazuo questioning if he's even human. Oma jokes about fighting a literal statue as he continues to slip every attack. Kamada tries to grab him, but our boy stays just out of reach, mocking the giant's slow, predictable movements. The giant goes for a low kick, his steel-toed boot smashing into debris. Oma leaps back, sensing that Kamada is finally getting serious. The ground shatters under the weight of the massive blow. A thunderous explosion echoes through the narrow alley. The impact is so powerful that it sends a cloud of dust into the air, signaling that one of them has finally landed a hit. Kazuo gasps, clutching the wall as the debris settles. He sees Kamada standing there, but the giant's posture is all wrong. The sheer force of the exchange has left the salaryman completely terrified. Plot twist. Kamada's leg is buried deep inside a concrete wall. He kicked right through it, but Oma just watches from the side, glad he wasn't on the receiving end of that power. Kamada is fuming, calling Oma an absolute pest. But our boy just laughs it off, clearly enjoying how much he's getting under the skin of a guy twice his massive size. Kazuo watches them, thinking how fantasy stories always let the little guy win. In the real world, though, size is everything, and he's certain Oma is about to get totally wrecked. Kamada keeps talking down to Oma, claiming there's no room for fantasy in the real world. He demands that the kid stop running and actually bring a real fight. Oma decides to show him exactly what a real fight looks like. He lunges forward with a punch so fast and heavy it nearly caves in the giant's face. Blood sprays as the giant staggers back. Yamashita is losing his mind with shock, but Kamada isn't done yet. He roars in fury and dashes back into the fray. But the speed difference is insane. Oma lands a bone-crushing blow that leaves the giant shaking on his knees. It's clear the Deva King is finally starting to crumble. Pointing a finger at the wounded beast, Oma lets out a predatory grin. He mocks the giant's pride, declaring that having huge muscles alone won't save him in this fight. From his hiding spot, Yamashita starts seeing things. The massive Kamada, once as big as a hill, suddenly seems to be shrinking right before his very eyes as terror sets in. No, it's the other way around. In Yamashita's mind, the mysterious fighter is growing into a colossal god of violence, making the Deva King look like a helpless little pet. Panting heavily and covered in sweat, Kamada is barely holding on. Oma mocks him again, asking if he finally understands who the real challenger is in this alleyway duel. Driven to madness by the insult, Kamada lets out a primal scream that echoes through the city. He pours every last drop of his remaining strength into one final, desperate charge. The giant swings a massive fist, but Oma just sighs bored. He effortlessly dodges the strike, his movements so fast they leave afterimages in the air as he prepares to finish. As Kamada lunges, Oma catches the giant's massive arm with a calm smile. He explains that he's going to redirect all that power and send it right back where it started. With a sickening crack, Oma redirects the momentum, snapping the giant's arm like a twig. The Deva King's face twists in pure agony as his own strength is turned against him. Kamada's arm hangs uselessly, dislocated in the most brutal way possible. Oma smugly notes the clean injury, while the stubborn giant tries to force himself back onto his feet again. But Oma doesn't give him a second chance. He unleashes a lightning-fast barrage of strikes, declaring that the giant is finished. Each hit lands with a devastating, bone-shattering impact. The Deva King is completely unrecognizable now, his face a swollen, bloody mess. As he starts to collapse, Oma casually turns his back, having already decided the outcome of this brawl. For the grand finale, Oma delivers a soaring high kick that sends the giant crashing into the pavement. Yamashita can only scream in horror as the back-alley god finally finishes his hunt. It's over. The massive Kamada lies face down in the dirt, completely defeated. Oma smirks, satisfied with the workout, and begins to walk away as if nothing even happened today. As the hooded fighter passes by, Yamashita stands frozen in awe. The bloodlust radiating from the young man is so intense it nearly knocks the poor salaryman off his feet. Something inside Yamashita snaps, and he shouts out into the night. Despite his terror, he desperately asks for the name of the man who just conquered a literal giant before him. Oma pauses and looks back over his shoulder. In that moment, Yamashita feels a level of respect bordering on worship for the young man who truly embodies the essence of violence. The mystery is finally solved. With a sharp, intense gaze, the fighter reveals his identity. His name is Takeda Oma, and the city better be ready for what comes next. Yamashita stammers the name back, completely overwhelmed by the strong aura. Oma turns fully around, unexpectedly asking for the salaryman's name in return, catching the old man off guard. Our boy finally finds his voice and screams out his own name with surprising passion. He introduces himself as Yamashita Kazuo, marking the official meeting between these two unlikely partners. Oma's face shifts back into that terrifying, predatory stare. He looks the nervous salaryman up and down, casually asking the shivering old man if he's looking for a fight too. Yamashita's eyes bulge as the sheer bloodlust nearly stops his heart. He's caught in the crosshairs of a true monster, and the crushing pressure makes him feel like his life is over. Oma's terrifying aura is so intense that Yamashita can barely breathe. The poor guy is convinced that if he doesn't say no right now, he'll literally suffocate from the pure pressure. The hooded fighter just stares at him with those cold, empty eyes. After a long, tense silence, he simply mutters a short response that leaves the old man shivering in place. Our boy decides to call it a night, walking away as he mutters about how much of a shame everything is. Yamashita just stands there, watching the god of violence disappear. Once he's alone, the sheer terror finally catches up to the salaryman. He collapses onto his knees, gasping for air as sweat pours down his face in the middle of the alley. Yamashita isn't sticking around for a second longer. He bolts out of that alleyway like his life depends on it, running through the city streets as fast as his legs can carry him. Meet Yamashita Kazuo, a 56-year-old corporate slave who spent his life drinking and gambling away his misery. He's the definition of a regular guy who has completely given up on life. But tonight was different. Driven by a sudden, inexplicable urge, he actually ended up sleeping with a woman for the first time in 15 years, completely breaking his long streak of loneliness. It turns out this was all thanks to primal survival instincts. Being exposed to Oma's intense bloodlust triggered a subconscious reaction in Kazuo's body that he didn't even know he possessed. His brain instinctively chose to preserve his legacy because it felt a genuine threat to his life. Of course, the poor guy has no idea that a street fight caused his behavior. Meanwhile, Oma is still out there, wandering through the crowded neon streets. He pulls up his hood and flashes a dark, predatory grin, clearly enjoying the chaos he's about to cause. Here's a quick breakdown of Takeda Oma. He stands at 182 centimeters and weighs 85 kilograms, with a design inspired by classic action heroes, but tweaked to look far more menacing and mysterious than usual. The scene shifts to the offices of Nogi Publishing. It's a normal workday, but something big is looming as we officially transition into the start of the Kengan matches and their history. Yamashita is currently getting ripped a new one by his manager, Matsui Hiroshi. The poor guy is bowing so low his head might hit the floor while apologizing for missing his quotas. His co-workers just whisper and watch the humiliation, knowing Matsui is just a bully who got his job through nepotism. Yamashita is seething inside, wishing he had the guts to fight back. In a wild moment of fantasy, Yamashita imagines himself as a muscular beast like Oma. He dreams of grabbing his annoying manager by the head and showing the whole office who's boss. Back in reality, he's still just a shivering old man bowing to a jerk. He realizes he's acting like a coward, but his legs just won't stop shaking in front of authority. Suddenly, the big department boss walks in, looking for someone. He completely ignores the manager and tells Yamashita that he's been summoned for a very private word with a high-ranking individual. The entire office goes silent as everyone wonders why a bottom-tier employee like Yamashita would be called away. Even the manager is speechless, watching the nervous old man get led away. The boss looks even more terrified than Yamashita, sweat dripping down his face. He demands to know what on earth the poor guy did to get noticed by the people upstairs. They arrive at the massive headquarters of Nogi Incorporated. It's a towering skyscraper that symbolizes the immense power and wealth behind the corporate empire that runs everything from the shadows. Yamashita is led into a massive, luxurious office overlooking the city. A mysterious man sits in a high-backed chair, welcoming him with a voice that carries the weight of absolute authority. Introducing Nogi Hideki, the powerful CEO of the Nogi Group. He's an older man with a commanding presence and sharp, calculating eyes that seem to see right through the shivering salaryman. Yamashita is absolutely panicking, convinced his life is over. He's never even seen the CEO before, so he's convinced he must have committed some unspeakable crime to be brought here. Nogi gets straight to the point, asking Yamashita how he thinks a massive conflict should be settled. This guy stares him down, waiting for an answer while poor Yamashita just freezes up. The CEO mentions boring stuff like talking it out or legal deals, but his vibe is way darker than that. Yamashita just stammers, clearly realizing he's way out of his league here. Nogi Hideki leans in with a terrifyingly intense gaze and says just one word: violence. Poor Yamashita has absolutely no idea what the CEO is talking about at this point. As the secretary lights his cigar, Nogi explains that his corporate empire was built on a simple foundation: overwhelming violence to suppress any and all opposition from rival companies. Taking a slow puff of his cigar, the CEO reveals that this bloody corporate tradition isn't anything new. In fact, it actually dates back over 300 years into Japan's history. Back in 1715, while the nation was officially at peace, merchants were engaged in a secret, brutal war. They were all desperate to gain the highly coveted status of shogunate purveyor. This greed sparked a never-ending cycle of hatred, intimidation, and even cold-blooded assassination. The world of business had become a literal battlefield where no one could control the expanding violence. Yamashita points out the obvious: if they were just killing each other, it didn't really solve the conflict at all. Nogi's secretary notes that his observation is actually quite excellent and insightful. Nogi explains that while anarchic violence only brings tyranny, regulated violence can actually be an effective safeguard. It was time for a chain that could finally control the spears of war. The solution came from an unlikely source: the seventh shogun of the Tokugawa shogunate, Tokugawa Ieyasu. He was just a 5-year-old boy, but he held the power of the nation. The young shogun summoned all the feuding merchants to his palace and gave them a simple order: if they truly wanted to settle their disputes, they had to change their methods. In a surprisingly bold move for a child, he commanded the greedy merchants to stop the shadows and instead battle it out fair and square for the entire world to see. The merchants were moved to tears by the young shogun's pure and simple wisdom. Feeling ashamed of their own petty greed, they all bowed low and agreed to his command. It's a bit of a paradox, but in that moment of historical change, it was violence that actually brought a new sense of order and peace to the chaotic world of commerce. The merchants formed a guild where violence was refined into martial arts. Instead of wars, they would hire confident fighters to settle their corporate differences in a simple one-on-one fist fight. These brutal matches were held under the strict supervision of the guild members. The rules were simple. The fight continued until one side fell, leaving no room for any further argument. Nogi reveals that his own ancestors were actually part of that ancient guild. Yamashita is sweating buckets, completely lost as to why he's being given this weirdly intense history lesson today. The CEO makes it clear that this isn't just some dusty old folk story from the past. This traditional method of competition is actually still being carried on by merchants today. Yamashita tries to laugh it off, hoping that the powerful CEO is just playing a really weird prank. But Nogi's cold, dead serious expression tells him that this is no joking matter. Nogi continues, explaining that even after the shogunate fell and the world changed, the merchants never stopped this tradition. They still use this brutal method to settle their modern corporate conflicts. They take their corporate wishes, their billion-dollar deals, and their entire legacies and entrust them all to the raw power found in the fists of their chosen representative martial arts fighters. With an intense look that could kill, Nogi Hideki finally reveals the name of this secret underground world of combat. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the legendary Kingan matches. Yamashita's eyes nearly pop out of his head as he repeats the name in pure shock. The reality of a secret world he's just stumbled into is finally starting to sink in. Nogi reveals that his company is actually scheduled for a match very soon. However, they've run into a major problem that threatens their stake in this upcoming high-stakes corporate duel. The fighter they originally hired suddenly became unable to compete. For a split second, Yamashita is terrified that the CEO is going to ask an old salaryman like him to fight. Nogi actually laughs at the idea of Yamashita fighting, calling a good joke but ultimately unnecessary. The poor guy's heart finally starts beating again as he realizes he's safe. Just as Nogi mentions that a new fighter came in to pitch himself, the office door swings open. Yamashita looks back and sees a familiar shadowed figure entering the luxury room. Yamashita Kazuo let out a blood-curdling scream, his face twisted in pure terror. He recognized the muscular dude from the alleyway, and he couldn't believe his eyes right now. Meet Takeda Oma, the new replacement fighter. Yamashita Kazuo was totally speechless, staring at the guy who basically looked like a god of violence compared to his own weak, trembling self. Then came the real shocker. CEO Nogi Hideki looked the old man dead in the eye and appointed him as Oma's manager. Talk about a massive promotion nobody actually wanted. Nogi dismissed the poor guy for the day, telling him to go bond with his new fighter. Meanwhile, the secretary wondered if they could really trust this wild beast of a man. Back in the office, the secretary questioned the boss's decision. Nogi just smirked, knowing Takeda Oma was a special find after he absolutely wrecked a giant like Kamada in seconds. Yamashita Kazuo was losing it, sweating buckets and crying. He couldn't understand why a low-level employee like him was being dragged into the top-secret world of these illegal Kengan matches. Nogi admitted he didn't actually trust Oma. He just needed Yamashita to act as an overseer. Basically, he wanted a transparent person to keep an eye on his dangerous new investment. The secretary still looked pretty skeptical about the whole plan. Nogi just leaned back with a smug grin, clearly hiding some bigger scheme behind those cold, calculating eyes of his. Yamashita chased after Takeda Oma through the crowded city streets, shouting for him to wait. He was desperate to find out what kind of person he was now stuck with. The poor old man was wheezing and gasping for air, trying to talk sense into the fighter. He begged Oma to decline the offer because illegal fighting is still a crime. Oma just looked back with a bone-chilling gaze that made the air feel heavy. He completely ignored the legal advice and simply suggested they go grab something to eat instead. Yamashita froze, his face turning pale as his survival instincts screamed at him. He realized right then that there was absolutely no way he could handle a monster like this. Even a simple invitation for food felt like an overwhelming force to Yamashita. To a man like Takeda Oma, reconsidering wasn't even an option. He lived by his own primal rules. Oma started walking away, completely unfazed. Yamashita panicked about the expenses, but he knew it was impossible to change this guy's mind once he decided on something. Our boy trailed behind, looking like a nervous wreck while Oma strolled through town with total confidence. The mismatch between these two was honestly kind of hilarious to watch. The tension was thick as the countdown began. There were only 7 days left until the official Kengan match, and the pressure was already starting to crush poor Yamashita. The scene shifts to Yamashita's sad daily life. At 56 years old, he's been a loyal employee for decades, but his home life is a total disaster compared to his work. He prepared breakfast for a family that barely exists anymore. He wished his life was smooth sailing, but every day felt like he was just drowning in his own misery. He left a tray outside a closed door for his eldest son, Kenzo. A hand reached out to grab the food, but the guy wouldn't even show his face. The door slammed shut without a single word. Kenzo had been a complete shut-in since middle school, leaving his father to wonder when he last saw his own son's face. Then he bumped into his second son, Yasuo, in the messy kitchen. The kid looked like a total delinquent, and he definitely wasn't happy to see his old man home. Yasuo was clutching a wad of cash with a rebellious scowl. He had dropped out of high school a year ago and clearly had zero respect for his hard-working father anymore. The boy pushed past Yamashita and ran outside to join his sketchy friends. He didn't care about the consequences, leaving the old man standing there completely helpless and ignored. Yasuo zoomed off on a bike with his delinquent friends, leaving his dad behind. The kid only ever shows up to steal money, and today was no exception. Yamashita Kazuo stared at his empty wallet, feeling the sting of the theft. Between his runaway wife and his deadbeat son, things at home were looking pretty bleak. Yamashita looked at his cramped house, the only thing he had left besides a 15-year mortgage. He stared at a faded family photo, wondering when everything started falling apart. Riding the train, the old man felt the weight of a new stress on his shoulders. He clutched a map, desperately hoping he hadn't read the directions to this sketchy place wrong. He arrived at a massive, rotting mansion that looked like it belonged in a horror movie. It was hard to believe this was the home of a professional corporate fighter. Our boy reached for the door handle, only to find the lock was already broken. With a shaky hand, he pushed the door open and announced his arrival to the empty hallway. The interior was even worse, filled with shattered glass and crumbling pillars. Yamashita stood in the middle of the wreckage, seriously doubting he was at the right address for a residence. He tried to navigate the mess, but the floorboards were completely rotten. One wrong step sent his foot crashing through the wood with a loud snap, nearly making him have a heart attack. After regaining his balance, he slowly opened another door, sweating buckets from the tension. The moment he looked inside, his eyes nearly popped out of his head from pure shock. There stood Oma, shirtless and drenched in blood from head to toe. Yamashita immediately lost it, screaming about murder while the fighter just looked back, wondering what the hell was wrong. The old man collapsed in terror, begging the killer to stay back while he reached for his phone. He saw blood dripping onto the floor and assumed Oma was fatally wounded. Oma casually flicked the red liquid off his arm, explaining that none of the blood actually belonged to him. Yamashita froze, his brain struggling to process what that could possibly mean. Turns out, he had just dragged a massive, dead wild boar into the room for dinner. He even had to bust a hole in the wall just to fit the beast inside. The fighter sat there cooking a steak, looking totally at peace in the middle of this dump. He'd been squatting in this abandoned mansion for half a year, surrounded by literal trash. Yamashita watched him, his mind racing as he tried to reconcile this wild lifestyle with modern society. He realized he was dealing with someone who lived by a completely different set of rules. He couldn't help but stare at the guy's insane physique. Every muscle was perfectly defined, making him look more like a living weapon than a normal human being in a tracksuit. Our boy actually started blushing, comparing the fighter's proportions to an ancient Greek statue. He quickly snapped out of it, realizing how weird it was to be checking out another man's body. Oma ripped into a piece of meat, declaring that you simply have to kill to live. It was a cold, primal philosophy that left the civilized salaryman completely stunned and speechless. The words hit Yamashita like a truck. He realized that modern society just hides the blood, letting people enjoy the results of civilization without ever reflecting on the brutal process behind it. He thought about the discounted meat at the grocery store, realizing that every single day involves killing just to survive. The essence of life hadn't changed, even with all our technology. The simplicity of that answer felt incredibly real to him. Oma stared back with those dark, intense eyes, waiting to see if the old man could handle the weight of the truth. The fighter finished his good grub and tossed the pan aside. He turned to Yamashita, asking if it was an actual emergency or if he just came over to watch him eat. Yamashita panicked, waving his hands around while trying to explain his new role. He didn't have the guts to tell Oma that Nogi had ordered him to act as a secret spy. Oma just gave him a faint, knowing smile. He claimed he could support himself just fine, clearly not realizing that the old man was basically his new babysitter for the tournament. Worried about his job, Yamashita tried to make a quick exit for work. Oma didn't seem to mind, telling the guy to make himself at home in the rotting mansion. Takeda Oma's face suddenly went cold. He glanced toward the shadows, asking Yamashita if he'd accidentally brought some unwanted guests. Our boy definitely knew they weren't alone anymore. Before Yamashita could even answer, the wall behind them literally exploded. Wood and dust flew everywhere as someone smashed through with a massive crash that shook the entire room. Yamashita Kazuo was shaking like a leaf, wondering what that terrifying sound was. He turned around to see Takeda Oma looking completely unbothered by the sudden intrusion. The old man's heart nearly stopped as Takeda Oma casually asked the intruders who the hell they were. He could sense a dangerous tension filling the ruined room. Two mysterious guys in hoodies stepped into the light, looking like they were there to cause major trouble. One of them didn't seem interested in the old man's excuses. Yamashita Kazuo tried to stop the fight before it even started, but Takeda Oma just smirked. He could already feel the vibe coming off these two uninvited guests. The old man recognized one of them. It was Ivan Karev, a famous Russian kickboxer. He couldn't believe a world-class athlete was standing right there in this dump. Ivan claimed it was just business, but the hooded dude behind him thought he was talking way too much. Takeda Oma just watched them, looking totally ready for a brawl. Ivan Karev warned Takeda Oma that he'd be stuck in a hospital bed for a long time. He launched a high-speed kick that cut through the air with a terrifying whistle. The kickboxer unleashed a brutal combination of strikes, but Takeda Oma managed to weave through them with ease. This guy's movements were on a completely different level of speed. Ivan threw a massive high kick that looked like it would take Oma's head right off. Yamashita Kazuo screamed in terror, thinking his new fighter was about to get wrecked. Takeda Oma dodged the lethal blow by an inch and dropped into a low stance. He gave a cold grin, knowing he had the upper hand in this back alley skirmish. Yamashita Kazuo panicked, shouting about Ivan's legendary high kicks, known as the Reaper's Sickle. Oma just told him to shut the hell up and let the pros handle it. The fighter flashed a truly terrifying smile, mocking Ivan's supposedly lethal technique. He joked that a kick that doesn't land is basically just a fan blowing air. That comment clearly pissed Ivan Karev off. His eyes narrowed with pure rage as he charged back in, determined to see how long Oma could keep dodging. But Takeda Oma was done playing games. He stepped inside Ivan's guard and delivered a perfectly timed strike that caught the Russian kickboxer completely off guard. With a terrifyingly calm expression, Oma noted that Ivan Karev relied way too much on flashy high kicks and forgot about his own defense. The fight was basically over. Ivan Karev hit the floor with a heavy thud, totally unconscious after just one precise strike. The Reaper had been taken down by a single, casual move. The other hooded man just stood there with his arms crossed, looking completely unfazed by his partner's defeat. He even admitted that Ivan was clearly outmatched from the start. Takeda Oma asked the mysterious guy if he wanted a piece of the action too. Instead of fighting, the stranger reached down and grabbed his fallen partner's leg. Ivan Karev regained consciousness for a split second, gasping for air on the floor. He was furious at the hooded man for interfering in his professional business. The stranger told Ivan to let go, saying he couldn't handle a real predator like Oma. He warned the fallen man not to dare look down on his own superiors. In a sudden flash, blood sprayed from Ivan's throat as if he'd been sliced by a razor. His eyes bulged in pure agony from the invisible, lethal attack. Yamashita Kazuo was absolutely horrified, screaming at the top of his lungs. He couldn't believe Ivan was suddenly bleeding out right in front of his very eyes. Takeda Oma's gaze sharpened as he realized the guy had used his fingers like a blade. Ivan lay in a growing pool of blood, his artery completely severed. The hooded dude finally tossed his jacket aside, revealing a wild mess of blonde hair. He wasn't hiding anymore, and the look in his eyes said he was ready to scrap. This guy is Lehido, and he's got a creepy grin and fingers that look like sharp claws. He mocked the earlier brawl, claiming he hates seeing losers struggle against real monsters. Yamashita Kazuo pointed a trembling finger at the stranger, shouting a warning to Takeda Oma about a hidden knife. Oma just looked on with a calm smirk, seemingly impressed by the sudden display of raw power. The mysterious fighter introduced himself as Lehido, a name that carried a weight of predatory intent. He revealed that he was actually slated to be Oma's upcoming opponent in the official Kengan match. Yamashita Kazuo stood paralyzed by the man's overwhelming presence, comparing his aura to that of a lethal carnivore. Lehido casually apologized for the mess, leaving his unconscious partner, Ivan, bleeding out on the floorboards. The old man couldn't believe Lehido's claim that he only came by to say hi, calling it a barefaced lie. Takeda Oma however, didn't seem to care about the deception or the obvious intimidation attempt. Lehido noted that this would be Oma's first official match, his grin widening as he admitted he almost felt like fighting him right then and there. He took a few steps back, ready to depart. Getting right in Oma's face, Lehido issued a chilling warning that their upcoming match would also be his retirement. He told the fighter not to let the event turn into a funeral, too. Takeda Oma simply smiled back, unfazed by the threat, and joked that Lehido would be the one giving the eulogy. With 6 days left until the match, the stage for a brutal battle was set. The day of the Kingon match finally arrived. The sun rose over the city, and the venue was set at a sketchy construction site scheduled for total demolition later that day. Yamashita Kazuo was absolutely losing it, gasping for air from the pure tension. Meanwhile, Takeda Oma just stood there with a terrifyingly calm smirk, soaking in the pressure like it was nothing. A new challenger appeared with a wild, wide-eyed expression. This guy looked completely unhinged, radiating an intense energy that signaled he wasn't just some random street thug looking for a quick fight. Nogi Hideki met his rival, Yashitake Yoshiro, who brought along the undefeated Lehido. The fighter was busy flaunting his strength, casually carrying 2 girls like they weighed absolutely nothing at all. Yashitake and Lehido both shared a creepy, confident grin. They were clearly looking down on Oma, thinking this rookie debut would be an easy win for their massive real estate empire today. The venue was the derelict Makinuchi building. Both CEOs laughed and traded barbs, acting like this high-stakes death match was just another casual day at the office for them and their companies. Nogi and Yashitake kept up the fake pleasantries, laughing like old friends while secretly wanting to crush each other. Oma just watched the corporate circus with total indifference and a cold gaze. Kazuo turned to Akiyama Keed, Nogi's professional secretary, wondering what exactly was on the line today. He had no idea the scale of the game he had been dragged into this time. Turns out, they weren't just fighting for pride. The winner would get the construction rights for a massive new skyscraper, a project worth more money than Kazuo could ever imagine in his life. When Kazuo heard the project cost 10 billion yen, his brain basically short-circuited. He realized these corporate elites lived on a completely different planet where money had no meaning to them. The atmosphere shifted instantly as Lehido and Oma locked eyes. This wasn't just a business deal anymore. It was a clash between 2 monsters for a literal mountain of cash and power. Nogi and Yashitake sealed the deal with a firm handshake. No hard feelings, they claimed, but the losers would be walking away from a multi-billion yen dream by the end of today. Lehido mocked Oma, telling him to start looking for a new job since he wouldn't survive the round. Kazuo stood there trembling, wondering if he was about to witness a literal murder. Oma didn't even blink at the insults. He just gave a slight, chilling smile that made it clear he wasn't intimidated by Lehido's trash talk or his impressive undefeated record in the ring. The blonde fighter kept being crude, telling Oma to enjoy his last moments of health. He was trying to psych out the rookie, but his own arrogance was completely off the charts. Lehido turned and walked away with his entourage, clearly bored with the pre-fight chatter. He was ready to get into the ring and show everyone why people called him a superhuman monster. Nogi checked in one last time, asking if he could trust his new fighter. Oma just gave him a cocky look, assuring the boss that everything was already under his total control. Kazuo tried to warn Oma about the eerie vibe Lehido was giving off. After watching sports for years, he could tell this guy was a completely different breed of dangerous and insane. Oma let out a dark, predatory grin that sent shivers down Kazuo's spine. Our boy was actually excited for the carnage, looking like a total psycho in his own right for once. Meanwhile, Yashitake told Lehido to show no mercy. He wanted to prove that his champion was way ahead of the trash Oma had beaten easily in the alleyway a few days ago. Lehido responded with a manic, bloodthirsty expression. He was more than ready to rip Oma apart, viewing the upcoming match as a perfect chance to showcase his freakish power and talent. The derelict building was packed with people whispering in anticipation. It was a bizarre scene, seeing a formal crowd gathered in such a run-down, dusty demolition site for an illegal fight. Kazuo was shocked by the venue's gritty appearance. Nogi explained that they used these secret locations to avoid any unwanted attention from the law or the unsuspecting public in the city. These weren't just random fans. These guys were elite Kengan Association members representing massive corporations, all here to personally witness the results of their multi-million yen bets. Nogi just chuckled, explaining that these matches were all about the thrill of the gamble. Kazuo looked around, realizing his boss didn't have a single law-abiding bone in his body. Kazuo scanned the crowd and recognized famous financial faces from TV programs. He realized these weren't just ordinary rich folk. The atmosphere at this demolition site was on a whole other level. Kazuo's sweat spiked as he overheard spectators betting thousands. He suspected they were leaving out several zeros, realizing the stakes of this underground game were far beyond his mundane salaryman reality. Lihito and Oma finally stepped into the ring, the crowd erupting in bloodthirsty cheers. Some fans called for a brutal fight, while others wondered what had happened to the legendary Deva King. Kazuo felt like he was in an away game, his heart hammering against his ribs. Nogi and Keed watched silently as Lihito's perfect 5-0 record was announced to the rowdy spectators. Keed worriedly asked Nogi if keeping Oma in the dark about Lihito's true weapon was a mistake. Nogi remained cold, viewing this entire high-stakes match as a simple test for his fighter. The referee roared for a face-off, demanding both fighters get ready. Nogi watched with narrowed eyes, thinking that if Oma couldn't handle this, he wasn't the man for his grand ambitions. Take your stance. The referee signaled to start. Lihito looked absolutely feral, while Oma remained disturbingly calm. Kazuo gripped his suit jacket, his face pale, as the corporate battle finally began. Oma and Lihito settled into their opening stances, eyeing each other like predators. Oma's hands were relaxed but ready, while Lihito stayed low, his massive muscles tensed for a sudden explosion. Keed was confused since neither fighter had moved an inch yet. Nogi corrected her, explaining that the mental battle had already begun even though they were standing perfectly still in a deadlock. It was a tense standoff, just like two master swordsmen waiting for a single lethal opening. Both men were fine-tuning their weight and focus, searching for the exact moment to strike. Yashite grinned like a shark, already viewing Nogi as a stepping stone for his company's expansion. Kazuo could only watch in terror, whispering Oma's name as the pressure became unbearable. The fighters locked eyes with lethal intensity. While the spectators held their breath, Yashitake and Nogi observed the two monsters they had unleashed for the sake of a 10 billion yen project. 32 seconds after the match officially started, the deadlock finally broke. Both men dashed forward at blinding speeds, their bodies clashing in the center of the ring with a violent impact. Kazuo thought they moved simultaneously, but the veteran saw that Oma made the first move. Our boy threw a massive punch, his hair flying back as he committed fully to the strike. Oma's fist connected hard with Lihito's face, causing a sickening crunch. Lihito admitted it hurt, but he maintained a manic grin, his eyes widening as he prepared to counter the blow. Kazuo's jaw dropped when he saw Lihito withstand the powerful strike. Instead of reeling, the blonde giant let out a roar, his muscles bulging as he prepared to crush the rookie fighter. Oma smirked as he expertly blocked Lihito's wild retaliations. He noted he was moving into the blows to reduce damage, showcasing technical mastery while the crowd went wild for the exchange. Lihito was a natural at both offense and defense, proving his elite level as a striker. Nogi and Ki debated who had the advantage while Oma stayed focused on the intense slugfest. Oma took a heavy blow, blood spraying as the crowd roared in excitement. Lihito looked like a complete maniac, his eyes bulging as he tried to hammer Oma into the concrete ground. Oma continued to weave through the storm of strikes, but Lihito's aggression was relentless. The disparity in their movements became clear to the spectators as they traded heavy blows mid-ring. Nogi noted that in a pure slugfest, Lihito didn't stand a chance in hell against Oma. Lehido reeled back as he was suddenly forced into a defensive position by Oma's unrelenting assault. But that was only if the fight stayed a simple slugfest. Lehido clutched his face, his shock evident as Oma dashed in to capitalize on the opening he had created so far. Oma landed a hellish strike that sent a shockwave through the air. Lehido let out a pained gasp, realizing his superhuman strength wasn't enough to stop the rookie's focused and technical assault. Oma was laying it on thick, hitting like a sledgehammer. Lehido was barely hanging on, feeling like he'd pass out if he lost focus for even a single second. Kazuo was hyped, seeing Oma finally take a massive lead. The crowd watched Lehido struggle, while Oma smirked, claiming he'd already crushed plenty of blonde giants just like this guy. Kazuo thought the match was over, seeing Oma pinning Lehido for the finish. But Yashitake just watched from the sidelines with a creepy, knowing sneer that meant serious trouble was coming. Suddenly, blood sprayed everywhere. Oma froze in shock as a deep slash appeared across his chest, wondering how his opponent managed to cut him without even using a hidden weapon or blade. Lehido roared back to life, catching everyone off guard with a sudden counter. Yashitake realized the rookie had forced his fighter to use his hidden trump card much earlier than expected. Lehido's fingertips grazed Oma's chest, and the result was absolutely brutal. The flesh literally squelched as it was ripped open, leaving Oma wide-eyed as he processed the sudden, sharp pain. Kazuo was convinced Lehido had smuggled a knife into the ring. He screamed in terror as blood spurted from Oma's chest, unable to comprehend how a bare hand caused that injury. The bloodthirsty crowd erupted, cheering for Lehido the Ripper and his legendary Razor's Edge. Kazuo stood there sweating buckets, finally realizing the terrifying reputation behind his boy's opponent. Oma stared at his wound, his mind racing. He realized there was no knife. Lehido had literally shaved the flesh off his chest using nothing but his incredibly strong fingertips. Lehido flashed a manic grin, his hand dripping with blood like a predator. Yashitake casually explained that grip strength is far more complex than most people think, involving three major components. First is crush grip for breaking things, and second is support grip for holding heavy objects. Lehido's training had pushed both of these traits to a level that was completely abnormal. But the third component, pinch grip, was where Lehido truly became a monster. He could support his entire massive frame while rock climbing using only the tips of his fingers. To this guy, scaling a sheer cliff face with zero tools was just a walk in the park. His fingertip strength had evolved far beyond the limits of any normal human being. Standing atop a peak, Lehido basked in the fresh air of his own power. The narrator declared him a true superhuman, a freak of nature born with a lethal biological gift. Because of this grip, every part of an opponent's body becomes a weak point. Whether it's flesh or bone, Lehido's fingertips act just like a set of sharp, unstoppable razors. This is the secret of the Razor's Edge, a special ability that turns Lehido's hands into terrifying weapons. He looked like a complete demon, ready to tear his rookie opponent apart. Oma gritted his teeth, realizing Nogi had kept this crucial information from him. Based on the crowd's reaction, he knew this was Lehido's signature move for finishing off his victims. Lehido taunted Oma, challenging him to a rip fest since the slugfest wasn't working. Our boy just smirked back, promising to give the blonde giant some serious payback for the messy wounds. Kazuo was still shaking, his brain failing to process the gore in front of him. The rest of the elite audience was mesmerized by the sheer brutality of Lehido's unique technique. Kazuo finally connected the dots. The mysterious damage at Oma's place wasn't from a hidden weapon. It was all Lehido's terrifying technique, and now Oma was feeling that same power firsthand. Kazuo panicked, wondering why the referee hadn't stopped the bloodbath yet. He soon realized that because Lehido used his bare hands, the technique was considered a perfectly legal move. Oma stood his ground despite the blood dripping down his torso. He needed a plan to counter the razor's edge before he was turned into mincemeat by the blonde psycho. Flashback to when Ichiro was just 11. His schoolmates watched in total awe as he effortlessly tore a solid 500 yen coin in half, earning him the nickname Superman. Even as a kid, Lehido had a manic, wide-eyed grin that hinted at his future violence. His friends were shocked by his power, joking about taking the torn coin to the bank. Back in the present, Lehido's hands moved in a blur of slashes. Oma dodged as best he could, but the razor's edge was relentless, constantly hunting for more flesh to rip. Lehido just kept slicing away, leaving Oma covered in deep, bloody gashes. It looked like our boy was getting totally dismantled by those freakish fingers, and he was losing way too much blood. Kazuo was totally losing it, screaming that the match needed to stop before Oma actually died. Lehido just grinned, thinking he was about to land one last strike to end it all. Oma caught Lehido with a devastating high kick that forced the blonde giant into a desperate block. Our protagonist looked completely bored, warning his opponent to finally stop pushing his luck. Lehido reeled from the impact, spitting blood as he scrambled back. He admitted that the kick was absolutely hellish, knowing he would be dead if he hadn't blocked at the last second. Kazuo screamed in terror when he saw Lehido grab Oma's leg, fearing his fighter was now trapped. Lehido grinned manically, declaring that between the two of them, Oma was the real goner. Lehido was depicted as a terrifying, armored beast with sharp claws and glowing eyes. The narration emphasized that his defenses and natural biological weapons left absolutely no chink in his metallic armor. Yashitake laughed hysterically, boasting that Lehido could strike, throw, and shred flesh without any blind spots. Lehido stood before the rowdy crowd, bloodied but confident, mocking Oma's futile efforts as a human. Oma was genuinely confused by the insult, but Lehido quickly clarified his meaning. He declared himself beyond humanity while lunging forward, his blood-soaked hand ready to tear through whatever stood in his way. Lehido explained that he was born into a completely different domain from ordinary people. His lethal pinch grip wasn't a result of training, but a natural-born talent that defined his superhuman status. Standing next to a suit of traditional samurai armor, Lehido explained the terrifying versatility of his gift. With his super grip, he could twist, rip, and gouge through anything he wanted. Lehido demonstrated his power by effortlessly shredding through solid steel plates with his bare fingertips. He looked like a complete monster as he tore the metal armor into jagged, broken pieces. Oma stayed focused despite the heavy pressure and the blood dripping down his chest. Lehido finally dropped his ring name, introducing himself by his real identity, Nakata Ichiro, to the rookie. Takeda Oma was bleeding out, but he didn't seem to care. He casually asked why this guy went by the name Lehido, treating a death match like a friendly chat. Lehido explained that he'd always loved hero names since he was a kid. This creep actually believed he was a Superman who had already surpassed the limits of human reason. Nogi Hideki watched from the stands, clearly unimpressed by the opponent's warped elitism. Beside him, Akiyama Keed admitted she already hated the guy's guts. The vibe of the arena was getting heavy. Keed adjusted her glasses, worried that Oma's chances were slim against such a freakish threat. Nogi just stared ahead, his expression unreadable as the match reached its turning point. Oma stretched his neck out, totally ignoring Lehido's posturing. He mocked the guy for being a total blabbermouth, wondering what happened to that silent hero act he was trying to pull. Our boy suddenly flashed a terrifying grin. He told the Superman that humans weren't weak enough to be beaten by a delusional loser like him. The psychological warfare was officially on. Yamashita Kazuo was screaming his lungs out in terror while the rival chairman laughed. Lehido looked ready to explode, but Oma calmly declared he'd already found a way to win. Patting his blood-soaked arm, Oma revealed he figured out the trick to the move almost instantly. He was just waiting to see if Lehido had any other tricks up his sleeve. Oma called the whole fight a letdown and started walking forward. Yamashita was losing his mind, begging him not to get close to those lethal fingers, but Oma didn't stop. The spectators were baffled by the rookie's weird movements. Keed wondered what he was planning, but Nogi remained silent, his eyes fixed on the man he'd chosen to represent him. Oma stepped right into Lehito's personal space, getting so close they were almost touching. The big guy froze, completely thrown off by someone coming within his range without any fear. Lehito regained his composure and prepared to strike, thinking Oma was an idiot for closing the gap. In the crowd, the managers were shouting opposite commands as the tension spiked. With a bloodthirsty grin, Lehito declared it was time to tear Oma apart. He didn't need to be told twice. He was going in for the kill right now. Lehito swung his arm in a wide slash, but Oma didn't even flinch. A massive flash filled the room as the strike seemingly connected with the young fighter's chest. Yamashita looked like he was about to pass out from the shock. On the other side, Yashitake Yoshiro was grinning like a maniac, convinced he'd just witnessed Oma's grisly end. Nogi smirked, telling Keed that Oma had passed his test for now. Despite the brutal strike, the young man was still standing tall, much to the confusion of everyone watching. Lehito's face twisted in confusion as Oma grabbed his hand. The freakish grip that should have shredded flesh was suddenly being neutralized by the very guy it was meant to kill. No way. Oma wasn't cut at all. Lehito couldn't believe his eyes, screaming in rage as his ultimate weapon failed to do even a scratch of damage this time around. Oma casually complimented the guy's fingers while holding them back. Nogi explained that Oma had already figured out how to turn the tables, using technique to overcome raw power. Turns out, the razor's edge needed both grip strength and distance for acceleration to actually work. Without room to swing, those fingers are just regular old hands. Talk about a weakness. Oma mocked him, saying he couldn't even rip tofu without distance. Lehito snapped, swinging his free left hand in a desperate attempt to wipe that cocky grin off Oma's face. But Oma was way ahead of him. He used the back of his hand to deflect the strike, proving he just had to keep those fingers from touching his skin to win. Our boy smirked, telling Lehito that his precious superpowers were officially sealed off. The Superman was looking pretty human right now, and he had no idea what to do next. Lehito looked completely rattled. This guy spent his whole life thinking he was an elite monster, only to get totally dismantled by a dude he didn't even take seriously. Oma just stood there with a smug grin, having neutralized Lehito's secret weapon. He casually asked what was next, proving his redirection technique was on a whole other level. Lehito sneered, thinking he had the upper hand. But Oma pointed out that at this range, their movements were equally restricted, making raw power a lot harder to use. The guy wasn't listening, though. He flexed his massive muscles, claiming his build was just in a completely different class. He was still convinced that size alone would win this. A raw contest of strength broke out as they grappled. The sound of cracking concrete filled the room while Lehito poured every ounce of his power into crushing his opponent. This psycho was loving every second of it. He grinned like a maniac, thinking the fight was already over. He really thought he was about to break Oma into pieces. Suddenly, Lehito lost his balance with a heavy thud. He looked completely baffled, wondering why his own body wasn't listening to him anymore. He just hit the floor out of nowhere. Oma landed a sharp strike right to the face. He mocked the guy, asking if he'd ever actually felt pain from such a close-quarters hit before. The tides were turning fast. Lehito snapped, screaming at our boy to stop messing around. Oma just casually pointed out that his left arm was wide open for another counter, totally ignoring the guy's rage. Lehito tried to swing again, but his power was thrown completely off. He realized too late that Oma was intentionally manipulating his flow to make him miss every single shot. The veteran Kingan Association members in the crowd were totally baffled. They'd seen hundreds of fights, but they'd never witnessed anything quite like this weird, one-sided beatdown before. Oma landed a brutal kick that sent the Superman reeling. Yashitake Yoshiro was in the stands losing his mind, screaming at his fighter to actually do something for a change. While everyone else was confused, Chairman Nogi Hideki just smirked. Only a handful of elite spectators could actually see the hidden truth behind the techniques Oma was pulling off. Well, everyone except Lehito, that is. He was the only one stuck in the middle of the nightmare, feeling his own strength being turned against him over and over again. Oma gave him a cold smile. He explained that all it took was a few millimeters of movement and a few grams of pressure to completely redirect the big guy's power. This diagram shows exactly how it works. Oma just waits for an attack to start, then applies a tiny bit of weight to shift the entire flow of the strike. As a result, Lehito's power went totally berserk. He crashed into the concrete with a heavy thud, finally forced to admit that he'd been completely outclassed by a superior fighter. Our boy has perfect control over the tide of power, and it's honestly not even human. Meanwhile, Yashitake was still screaming like a banshee for Lehito to get up. Oma decided to end the show. He delivered a crushing stomp that cracked the ground beneath them. It was finally over, and Lehito wasn't getting back up this time. The referee stepped in, officially calling the match. Lehito was out cold with his face buried in the concrete. The underdog had actually pulled off the impossible victory. Takeda Oma stood tall as the winner was officially announced. He looked barely winded, despite taking some serious damage earlier in the fight. He really is a different breed. Yamashita Kazuo was paralyzed with shock, unable to believe his fighter actually won. Nogi just gave a satisfied look, noting that the rookie had passed his first test. For now. Yashitake threw a total tantrum, kicking equipment and firing his fighter on the spot. Oma didn't care, though. He just asked the unconscious guy if he felt that last hit. This guy walked away like it was just another Tuesday. The crowd was left stunned by a technique that defied all reason, marking the birth of a new legend. Yamashita rushed over to congratulate him while the spectators buzzed with excitement. They came to see a pro, but ended up discovering a total dark horse instead. Next up, we meet Wakatsuki Takashi and his manager. This dude is way too calm for a fighter, casually claiming he's got what it takes to bring home the win. His manager just laughs, calling him the real Superman. Unlike Lehito, Wakatsuki actually has the power to back it up, but Oma is the one attracting some dangerous attention in the shadows. Deep in the shadows, some mysterious figures were closely watching Takeda Oma. They noted his high-level technique and debated which member of their clan would be the best fit to take him down. Meanwhile, a sketchy-looking dude named Kabaraji Koji was already planning his move. He claimed he'd already figured out all of Oma's fighting tendencies and just needed to set up the perfect counter. Back in the arena, Nogi Hideki admitted he was genuinely surprised. He hadn't expected the rookie to dominate a veteran like Lehito so completely, marking a massive debut for the underground fighter. Oma wasn't one for small talk, bluntly asking what the boss wanted from him next. Nogi Hideki kept his cards close to his chest, refusing to reveal his true plans just yet. As workers cleaned up the trashed arena, the world of the elite kept moving forward. The high-stakes drama of the Kingan matches was just another day at the office for these guys. Nogi Hideki made it clear he had high hopes for Oma, assuming he could actually survive the brutal matches ahead. Our boy just smirked, clearly unfazed by the chairman's cold warning. The Makinuchi building stood as a silent monument to the victory. Thanks to Oma's win, Nogi Group officially secured the multi-billion yen construction rights, changing the city's skyline forever. Here's the final scoreboard. Takeda Oma took the win via a brutal head stomp in just 5 minutes and 17 seconds. Lehito was left with nothing but a losing record. A week passed, and Yamashita Kazuo was back to his miserable salaryman routine at Nogi Publishing. He was working late, desperately trying to convince himself that his life was finally normal again. While grabbing a drink from a vending machine, the poor guy started doubting his own sanity. He wondered if that crazy Kingan match had even been real or just some fever dream. Right then, Oma suddenly loomed behind him in the shadows. Yamashita nearly jumped out of his skin, letting out a blood-curdling scream that probably echoed through the entire office building. The salaryman was baffled by how the fighter even got inside past security. Oma just casually mentioned that the guards were currently taking a nap and would probably wake up soon. Yamashita was terrified of getting fired, but Oma didn't care about corporate rules. He told the old man to stop whining and follow him for a bit, clearly having something planned. Turns out, he just wanted a meal. They sat down at a traditional bar, but the broke salaryman was already panicking about the bill, reminding Oma that payday wasn't until tomorrow. Suddenly, the door slid open and Akiyama Kid stepped inside. Yamashita was totally blindsided, wondering why the chairman's high-ranking secretary was showing up at their humble dinner spot. She was just as surprised to find Yamashita there. She adjusted her glasses, her professional mask slipping for just a second as she realized the two were actually hanging out together. Oma had been waiting for her to bring the goods. She reached into her bag and pulled out a massive, thick envelope, the cold hard cash our boy earned for wrecking Lehito. Seeing that much money in person made Yamashita sweat bullets. He'd never seen such a thick stack of cash in his life, wondering just how much a single Kingan win was worth. He delivered the payment and prepared to head out, but the lonely salaryman couldn't help himself. He awkwardly invited her to stay for a few drinks, hoping to actually get to know her. To his absolute shock, the cold secretary actually accepted the offer. Yamashita was thrilled, frantically pouring her a drink, while Oma focused on devouring a massive mountain of food. This girl can really put them back. Yamashita was amazed by her drinking speed, though his gaze definitely wandered to her chest as he realized she was more approachable than he thought. After a few rounds, the salaryman built up the courage to ask why a plain employee like him was chosen as Oma's manager. Kid admitted she was dying to know that secret too. Oma just kept eating, letting them gossip. Kid figured Nogi must have some hidden motive, but then she turned the conversation back to the main event with a serious question. Kid's gaze sharpened behind her glasses. She straight up asked Oma why he even bothered with these lethal underground matches, curious about what actually drives a guy like him to risk his life. Our boy just flashed a chilling smirk. He didn't think he needed a specific reason to fight, making it clear that combat was just his nature, but Kid had some serious facts to drop. Kid compared the Kingan matches to Ultimate Fight, the world's biggest public MMA promotion. While they have 217 fighters, the underground world operates on a completely different scale. Yamashita's jaw hit the floor when he heard the stats. The Kingan Association has over 1,200 registered fighters, and they step into the ring nearly 10 times as often as the pros. The secretary explained that every single one of those members is a hand-picked elite. This isn't just a bigger league. It's a roster of killers that makes public sports look like child's play. But the prestige comes with a dark price. Injuries and deaths are frequent, and honestly, the paychecks don't even begin to cover the massive risk these men take with every single match. Kid turned her sharp gaze toward Oma. She couldn't wrap her head around why anyone would willingly leap into such a death trap without having a death wish or a very deep secret. She pointed out that with his insane level of skill, Oma could easily become a global superstar in the public MMA circuit without ever having to worry about dying in some basement. Our boy just gave her a cocky smirk, leaning in close. He jokingly asked if she was genuinely worried about him, or if she was just starting to feel wet for him. Yamashita nearly choked on his drink from the embarrassment. Kid wasn't amused at all, but Oma just laughed it off, finally deciding to give her a straight answer for once. His face turned dead serious as he delivered his ultimate truth. He simply wants to prove he's the strongest man alive, and every other reason people give is just a total lie. Kid was taken aback by his simplicity. She reminded him that people actually die for that dream, but Oma's intense gaze made it clear he was fully prepared for the consequences. Not happening, because I'm never going to lose. The sheer level of confidence in his voice was chilling. He didn't just hope to win. He already considered his victory a settled fact. The secretary realized this guy wasn't bluffing. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a pure, unshakable trust in his own power that bordered on insanity. She'd never met anyone like him. She admitted that she's officially hooked and wants to see how far he can actually go. Oma just smirked, telling her to keep her eyes open while he climbs to the top. As they finished their meal, Oma clenched his fist with a look of pure anticipation. He was already thinking about the 1,204 other fighters he'd have to crush to reach the summit. Suddenly, Keith's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Nogi Hideki. She dropped a major update on the guys. Oma's next official Kingan match is scheduled in just 2 short days. Yamashita went into full panic mode, screaming that it was too soon for another fight. But Oma just sat back with a grin, loving the fast pace and asking for his next victim. He'd pulled up the fighter profile on her tablet. The next opponent is a man named Kabaraji Koji, representing Koyama Mart. He definitely didn't look like your typical world-class martial artist. Yamashita thought the guy just looked like some friendly, washed-out middle-aged dude. Even Oma admitted he couldn't feel a single drop of killing intent or threat coming from the guy's photo. But the secretary warned them both not to be naive. Kabaraji Koji might have a mediocre record on paper, but he's a dirty fighter who earned himself the terrifying nickname Medicine Man. The truth is absolutely horrifying. Every single fighter who has ever stepped in a ring with this Medicine Man ended up completely incapacitated, regardless of whether they actually won or lost.